That Father's Day started like any other, a quiet Sunday in my little bungalow outside of Calgary. But it ended with my heart simmering like a forgotten stew, all because of a $2 lottery ticket and a $13,000 Mediterranean cruise. My daughter Chloe had the audacity to hand her father-in-law Graham a luxury cruise package, paid for with my hard-earned savings, mind you, while tossing me a scratch-and-win ticket with a smirk. "If it's a big one, Dad," she chirped. "Half's mine, eh?" I managed a tight smile, but inside a full-blown blizzard was brewing. Little did she know that flimsy ticket would turn into $120 million, and that I was about to teach her a truly Canadian lesson in gratitude. The aroma of my famous maple-glazed salmon was still wafting through the kitchen when Chloe's voice, bright as a freshly fallen snowflake, sliced through the air. "All right, Dad, here's your little something," she announced, flicking a crumpled lottery ticket across my sturdy oak table. My fingers, calloused from years under the hoods of cars, instinctively reached out, smoothing the flimsy paper against the checkered tablecloth. $2. "And remember, if it's a winner, half's coming my way," she added, that familiar, slightly entitled smirk playing on her lips. I stared at the numbers, a blurry green mess, my mind trying to reconcile the casual dismissiveness with the significance of Father's Day. "Very thoughtful, sweetheart," I mumbled, forcing a smile that felt like it was carved from ice. "This is— Oh, but wait, Dad." Chloe cut me off, her voice suddenly soaring with that theatrical flair she picked up from her drama classes back in university. "I haven't given Graham his main present yet." She practically bounced out of her seat, reaching behind her chair. My eyes followed as she pulled out an ornate gift box, the kind wrapped in imported paper that probably cost more than my entire week's haul from the local Safeway. The ribbon alone seemed to shimmer with an air of superiority under the plain bulb of my dining room fixture. Graham, Chloe's father-in-law, sat up straighter in his chair, his custom-tailored linen shirt catching the soft afternoon light that filtered through my modest window panes. He had that particular kind of effortless confidence, the one that only comes from never having to worry about the next gas bill or the cost of a new set of tires. Chloe beamed, extracting sleek, thick tickets from the silk-lined box. "These," she announced, her voice booming slightly, "are for a 2-week Mediterranean cruise. $13,000, Dad. Graham deserves the absolute best for everything he's done for our family." The flimsy $2 lottery ticket in my hand suddenly felt not just microscopic, but utterly invisible. I watched Graham, his fingers perfectly manicured, trace the gold embossing on the cruise tickets, a look of profound satisfaction spreading across his face. "Now this, Chloe." Graham purred, his voice carrying that particular rich timbre usually reserved for connoisseurs of fine wine or vintage cars. "This is what I call a truly proper gift." His gaze, cool and appraising, met mine across the table. "Your father taught you well." The words hung in the air like a thick fog rolling in from the Atlantic. My sister Brenda coughed lightly into her hand, and my nephew Liam suddenly found the grain of the oak table incredibly fascinating. Everyone else just seemed to be studying their plates with an unprecedented intensity. Dad always said actions speak louder than words. Chloe chirped back, her laugh bright and sharp enough to cut glass. She exchanged a quick, knowing glance with Graham, a look that made something coil tight in my chest. Some people show their love through grand gestures. She continued, waving a hand vaguely in the direction of my lonely lottery ticket. And others, well, you know. I kept my grip steady on the flimsy paper, though my hands were itching to tremble. "I appreciate the thought, Chloe." I managed each word, feeling like a separate effort. "Really?" she asked, waving a hand dismissively. "Oh, it's just a little joke, Dad. But seriously, if you hit the jackpot, I fully expect my cut. I mean, I paid for it after all." Graham chuckled a low, satisfied rumble. "Perhaps next year, Stephen," he drawled, his eyes glinting, "you'll surprise us all with something a little more substantial, eh?" The afternoon sun, usually so comforting, now seemed to highlight every strained smile and awkward shift around my table. Brenda's fork paused midair halfway to her mouth. Liam's wife, Olivia, suddenly developed a profound interest in the faded family photos on my living room wall. Even my grandson, Noah, usually glued to his phone, like a second limb, looked up, a puzzled frown on his young face. "These cruise tickets," Graham continued, fanning them out with a flourish like a poker hand, "represent 2 weeks of pure bliss in the Mediterranean. First-class accommodations, private balcony, all gourmet meals included," he boasted, "the kind of experience that truly makes lasting memories, eh?" I just nodded my throat, feeling like it was packed with wet sand. "Sounds wonderful," I croaked. "It is wonderful," Chloe agreed, her voice practically gushing. "Graham has just always been there for us financially. He helped us put the down payment on our townhouse, paid for Noah's private school tuition, even covers our ski club membership. He's more than earned something special." The $2 lottery ticket in my hand felt like it was about to dissolve into dust, a cruel joke. My mind drifted back to the double shifts I'd pulled at the garage, the numb overtime hours spent hunched over engines, rebuilding transmissions in the frigid Canadian winter, all to put Chloe through her university degree. The endless nights, I'd practically fallen asleep. My bones ached from those endless shifts, the kind that made sure her textbooks were paid for her university dreams within reach. I just sat there, slumped in my old armchair, watching them. "Hope you both have a grand time on that cruise, eh?" I mumbled the words, tasting like ashes. Graham, smooth as fresh ice, tucked the sleek tickets back into their velvet box. "Oh, we will, Stephen." He purred, his smile too wide. "This is exactly how families should support one another, with generosity and genuine respect." The irony of it all could have chipped paint off the walls. My gaze remained fixed on the crumpled $2 scratch ticket in my palm. $2. It was the same amount I'd give Chloe for a double scoop back when she was just a little tyke, eyes wide with delight at the promise of vanilla and sprinkles. That little gesture used to be enough to light up her whole face. Now, it felt like a joke. Soon enough, the charade was over. Car doors slammed outside, engines sputtered to life, and the distant hum of their tires faded into the crisp Calgary evening. I stayed put at my old oak table, the lottery ticket still clutched tight, watching the last sliver of the prairie sunset bleed out of my dining room window. The bungalow settled into its familiar, quiet hum, the soundtrack of my solitary life. My eyes drifted over the faded family photos on the wall, the sturdy but well-worn furniture I'd picked up piece by piece over the decades, all the little touches I'd added for a Father's Day that had just ended, leaving a sour taste. The next morning, the tiny lottery ticket lay abandoned beside my cold, half-empty coffee mug, bleached by the pale light filtering through my kitchen window. I pulled up my laptop, the screen a dizzying blur of numbers as I settled into my usual morning ritual, poring over my monthly bank statement. 40 years I'd been doing this. First as a young father, pinching every penny to make ends meet. Now as a careful retiree, guarding what little I had managed to squirrel away for my twilight years. My finger calloused from countless hours under the hood of a Ford F-150, traced down the familiar list: gas bill, groceries from Safeway, the modest cost of the Father's Day feast. Everything accounted for everything expected, until my gaze landed on a line that made the lukewarm coffee in my mouth suddenly feel like ice. Premium travel services, $13,600. I blinked, sure my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the amount stared back, defiant and unchanged. A shiver ran down my spine as I cross-referenced the date with my dog-eared calendar. A week ago, Thursday, I'd been elbow-deep in transmission fluid nowhere near a travel agency. The truth hit me with the force of a hockey puck to the gut. Chloe. She still had authorized access to my account. I'd set it up years ago after her mother passed a safety net in case of an emergency. A precaution I'd completely forgotten about. My old flip phone felt like a lead weight in my trembling hand as I punched in her number. Each ring seemed to boom in my quiet kitchen, drowning out the frantic thump of my own heart. "Hello, Dad." Her voice, perfectly pitched, carried that familiar tone of polite irritation she reserved for when I dared to intrude on her very important life. "Chloe," I managed, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "I'm looking at my bank statement. There's a charge for over $13,000 from premium travel services." A beat of silence, then a light, airy laugh as if I'd just told a silly joke. "Oh, that. Yeah, I bought Graham his cruise. He deserves something really nice, don't you think?" Her words were a stinging slap across my face. You took $13,000 from my account without even asking." My voice was a raw whisper. "I didn't take anything, Dad," she retorted, her tone shifting, a defensive edge creeping in. "I used family money for a family gift. It's just sitting there anyway," she added dismissively. "Chloe, that's theft." The word ripped through my throat. "You stole from me." "It's not stealing when it's family money," she snapped back, her voice rising. "Graham has always been there for us financially. He helped us when we really needed it. This is just returning the favor." I gripped the phone so tight, my knuckles turned white. "Chloe, I'm your father. I raised you. I pulled double shifts, worked myself to the bone just to put you through university. And Graham helped us both move beyond that, Dad." She cut in, her voice cold as an Alberta winter night. "He's shown us what real success looks like, what it truly means to be generous, to live well, to give meaningful gifts, instead of—" She paused, and I could hear her sigh, heavy with disdain. "Instead of a $2 scratch ticket." The raw cruelty of her words left me breathless. This was Chloe, my little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap as I read her stories about brave adventurers, the teenager who'd sobbed on my shoulder after her mother passed, the young woman who once called me her hero. "Dad, are you still there?" "I'm here." I whispered the word, barely a breath. "Look, I know you're upset, but you need to be rational here. Graham earned this. He's a truly successful man. He's genuinely contributed to our family's well-being, Dad. He deserves recognition for everything he's done." Her voice, already sharp, ratcheted up a notch. "And what about everything I've done?" I shot back the words, feeling like shards of ice. A beat of silence, heavy and cold, hung between us. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, devoid of warmth, like a winter prairie wind. "You did what fathers are supposed to do, Dad. Graham went above and beyond. He's truly family, eh?" The line went dead with a click that sounded final, like a tomb closing. I stared at my old flip phone, the dial tone a mournful hum in my quiet kitchen, echoing like a mournful lament for something lost. My hands, calloused and trembling, slowly lowered it to the counter. These were the same hands that had cradled her as a baby, patiently helped her balance on her first bike, and clapped until they ached at her university convocation. Now they just felt useless. I stalked to my nightstand, my gaze fixed on the flimsy lottery ticket, that $2 joke she'd flicked at me like I was some stray dog. The cruelest part, even this pathetic excuse for a gift had been bought with my own hard-earned, now stolen money. The irony was so stark, so utterly perfect, it twisted into a bitter laugh caught in my throat. Instead, I balled the ticket into a tight fist and marched straight to the kitchen trash can, my jaw clenched. The crumpled paper made a satisfying hollow thud as it hit the bottom, joining the day's coffee grounds and empty pop cans. It felt like I was throwing away my simple, honest, and now apparently worthless life right along with it. The bungalow, usually my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a trapping cage. The walls seemed to close in, pressing down on me. I needed air, needed to move, needed to be anywhere, but in this echoing box where Chloe's betrayal bounced off every surface. I snatched my worn jacket from the hook and practically bolted for the door. My legs, moving almost on their own, carried me down the familiar tree-lined streets of my Calgary neighborhood. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and freshly cut grass, filled with the familiar symphony of suburban life. The distant rumble of lawnmowers firing up the joyful shrieks of kids playing road hockey, the friendly calls of neighbors shouting greetings over fence lines. Old Mrs. Henderson waved from her neatly tended garden, her arthritic hands gently pruning her prize-winning tomatoes. "Lovely morning, Stephen," she chirped. "Yeah, it is." I mumbled back, the words automatic, though the day felt anything but lovely. I trudged past the McLeod house where Liam was patiently showing his grandson, Jake, how to wind up for a proper slap shot with a street hockey stick. The boy's innocent laughter, pure and uncomplicated, floated on the breeze. It hit me then. The memory of teaching Chloe the same way, her tiny mitts gripping the stick, her face beaming with pure joy, when she finally connected with the puck, sending it soaring. When had that shifted? When had my steady, unwavering love become insufficient? When did my simple, honest life become something to be dismissed, even ashamed? Of those questions, heavy as a winter coat, followed me down Maple Street, past the corner convenience store, where I'd bought Chloe her favorite candy, as a little tyke, past the community park, where she'd spent countless summer afternoons on the swings. Every cherished memory now felt tainted, viewed through the harsh, distorting lens of what she'd become. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a sudden jolt. For a brief, foolish moment, a flicker of desperate hope ignited in my chest. Maybe Chloe had reconsidered. Maybe she'd finally seen the light, realized the gravity of what she'd done. I pulled out my phone, heart hammering. The screen lit up with her name, and the message read, "Dad talked to Graham about the money situation. He thinks you're totally overreacting. It's not like you needed it for anything important, eh? We'll pay you back when we can. Maybe for Christmas. K." I stopped dead in my tracks, the crisp air suddenly searing my lungs. I read the message again, then a third time. When we can. As if $13,000 was just loose change I'd misplaced under the couch cushions. As if my life savings, my hard-won financial security, was suddenly up for negotiation. As if I should be thankful for the possibility of a repayment someday, maybe for Christmas. The phone began to ring before I could even formulate a response to her gall. My sister Brenda's name flashed on the screen. "Stephen, are you all right? Chloe just called me, said you were upset about some money thing." "She stole $13,000 from my account, Brenda." I stated the words coming out flat, devoid of any feeling, "to buy her father-in-law a cruise." A moment of stunned silence stretched across the line. She what?" Brenda finally managed her voice, a mix of disbelief and horror. "She still had access to my account. She used it to buy Graham a $13,000 Mediterranean cruise for Father's Day, and she gave me a $2 lottery ticket, saying half the winnings were hers, eh? Good Lord, Stephen. Brenda breathed the shock evident in her tone. Are you sure, Stephen? Maybe there's some kind of mistake. She admitted it, Brenda. Said it wasn't stealing, because it was family money. Said Graham deserved it because he's been so generous to them. Unlike me, apparently. I let out a bitter, choked laugh, devoid of any humor. Brenda's voice softened, filled with the kind of profound sympathy that made my chest ache, a cold, hollow pain. Oh, Stephen, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she'd become so. I don't even know what to call it. Cruel. I finished for her the word, a raw, guttural whisper. She's become cruel. We spoke for a few more minutes, Brenda, offering to drive over immediately to call Chloe herself, to help in any way she possibly could. But my boots dragged on the pavement, each step a heavy confession of a spirit utterly depleted. It wasn't the uphill climb that sapped my strength. It was the crushing weight of betrayal. When I finally stepped back into my little bungalow, it felt diminished, shrunk somehow, as if Chloe's dismissive gaze had physically peeled away layers of paint, exposed the worn spots on the floorboards, and left it bare, revealing a kind of poverty that had nothing to do with money, but everything to do with worth. My eyes were drawn as if by an invisible string to the kitchen trash can. There it was, the crumpled $2 lottery ticket, a little green phantom amidst the coffee grounds, and yesterday's mail. The cruel punchline to a joke I hadn't found funny, not even for a second. I stood there, rooted, remembering the casual flick of Chloe's wrist, the glint in her eye, as she'd said, "Half's mine, eh?" A wave of icy resolve washed over me. Tomorrow I'd call the bank. I'd sever that umbilical cord, that thread of trust I'd foolishly left dangling for far too long. But tonight, this quiet, wounded house would bear witness to my grief. Tonight I'd mourn the daughter I'd lost, the girl who was now a stranger. A relationship like a tender plant had withered and died right under my nose, and I'd been too busy tilling the soil of my own simple life to even notice. That flimsy ticket, still a crumpled promise of nothing, lay forgotten in the bin. But I was grieving something far more precious, a bond that had simply evaporated. But the dawn, when it finally crept through my kitchen window, brought with it a stark, unforgiving clarity. It was the kind of morning that demands action, a cold dip into an icy lake. My coffee sat untouched, a sad, cooling testament to a sleepless night. But my hands, usually trembling with a nervous tremor, were steady, purposeful. On a scrap of paper I'd scrawled the phone number for the First National Bank. It was time. A pleasant professional voice answered. First National Bank, Rebecca speaking. How can I help you today, Mr. Woods? My voice was gruff but unwavering. Rebecca, I need to revoke authorized access to my account. Immediately. Someone's been making unauthorized purchases. There was no hesitation, no judgment. Rebecca guided me through it, her tone laced with just the right amount of professional empathy. 15 minutes. That's all it took. 15 minutes to sever a connection I'd maintained out of love, out of a misguided sense of safety for Chloe since her mother passed. Access terminated, Mr. Woods. New security protocols are now in place. She asked if there was anything else. No, Rebecca. That covers it. Thank you. As I hung up, a profound sense of calm, solid as a granite outcropping, settled over me. It was the feeling of protecting myself, of drawing a line in the sand, something I hadn't truly felt in years. I took a slow, sweeping gaze around my kitchen. The morning light, once so harsh, now bathed the modest space in a gentle glow. It didn't feel shabby anymore. Not a bit. It felt honest. rooted. This humble little space with its sturdy oak table and well-used appliances was unequivocally, resolutely mine. My eyes drifted to the trash can again, that crumpled lottery ticket still nestled amongst the coffee grounds. A $2 joke meant to dismiss me, to rub in the grandeur of Graham's cruise. The bitterest part. It had been bought with my own hard-earned money. Money Chloe had brazenly taken, tossed back at me like I was some desperate soul at a soup kitchen, I walked over, leaning down, my gaze fixed on the crinkled paper. The sheer gall of it. She'd pilfered from me to buy me a token gift, then, with that trademark smirk, claimed a portion of the winnings. The audacity was so brazen, so perfectly circular in its cruelty, it was almost comical. Almost. But the laugh died in my throat, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. With a sudden surge of something akin to righteous fury, I snatched the ticket from the trash and smoothed it flat on my kitchen counter. The cheap paper crinkled under my thumb. The numbers stark and unblinking stared back. 074233542, Powerball 18. I stared at them, committing them to memory, these unassuming digits that had become a bitter symbol of all that was broken. Then, with a grunt of pure frustration, I balled it up again, tighter this time, and slammed it back into the bin, the thud echoing the hollow space in my chest. The morning stretched out quiet as a fresh snowfall on the prairies. But it wasn't peaceful. It felt empty, echoing. I needed to move to fill the space inside me, to be anywhere but these walls, still vibrating with the ghost of yesterday's cutting words. I grabbed my worn jacket from the peg by the door, and without another thought, let my old boots carry me down the familiar tree-lined streets of my Calgary neighborhood. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of a bright, if cold, day. It was filled with the familiar symphony of a Canadian morning, the distant rumble of lawn mowers firing up the joyful shrieks of kids already playing road hockey, the friendly calls of neighbors sharing a "good morning, over their fence lines. Old Mrs. Patterson, her face a road map of good living, was already in her garden, her gnarled hands tenderly fussing over her prize-winning petunias. She looked up, her smile, warm and unforced. "Morning, Stephen. You're out early today, I paused at her low picket fence. "Couldn't sleep, Mrs. Patterson. Thought a walk might clear the cobwebs." She nodded, her eyes twinkling with a knowing understanding. "Sometimes the best thinking happens when your feet are moving, dear. My Harold used to say that." Harold, her late husband, bless his soul. A salt-of-the-earth kind of guy, just like me. A mechanic, two hands stained with grease and honest labor. He'd always treated people with respect, with an inherent understanding that true worth wasn't measured in the size of your house or the flash of your car. No, Harold knew deep down in his bones that character. That was the currency that truly mattered. Harold had always believed that a person's true wealth lay not in their bank balance, but in the respect they earned and the community they built. "He sure had that right, Mrs. Patterson." I murmured, my voice a quiet echo of my thoughts. My boots crunched lightly on the sidewalk as I continued my route, passing the McLeod residence. I spotted Liam there, patiently hosing down his old Ford pickup. Jake, his grandson, more interested in soaking his grandpa than the vehicle itself. Their unrestrained giggles floated on the crisp air, a simple melody of pure, uncomplicated joy. My mind drifted back to coaching Chloe how to tie her skates, or watching her face light up with a fresh Tim Hortons donut. A couple of blocks further, I ambled past the neighborhood corner store, the one where I'd spent countless loonies on dime bags of penny candy as a kid. Old Mr. Lee, the owner, was meticulously arranging fresh fruit in his display window, each gala apple and clementine orange, placed with an almost artistic precision. 30 years Mr. Lee had been there serving our little corner of Calgary with quiet, unwavering dignity, never chasing the big bucks, always staying true to his word. He like Harold, like Mrs. Patterson, like Liam. They all understood something. Chloe had apparently long forgotten that there's a real, tangible honor in honest labor, in treating your neighbors with genuine respect, in forging connections built on something much more solid than a financial transaction. My old phone, still a flip phone, buzzed in my jacket pocket, startling me. For a fleeting, foolish second, a desperate flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe Chloe had had a change of heart. Maybe the gravity of her actions had finally sunk in. I pulled it out, my pulse thrumming against my ribs. The screen glowed with her name, and then the message popped up. Dad talked to Graham about the money situation. He thinks you're totally overreacting. It's not like you needed it for anything important, eh? We'll pay you back when we can. Maybe for Christmas. Kay. I stopped dead in my tracks, the crisp morning air suddenly searing my lungs. I read the message again, then a third time. When we can. As if $13,000 was just loose change I'd misplaced under the couch cushions. As if my life savings, my hard-won financial security, was suddenly up for negotiation. As if I should be thankful for the possibility of a repayment someday, maybe for Christmas. It all clicked into place, sharp and cold as an icicle. This was her. This was what I had become in her eyes. Without a word, I deleted the message, the small delete sound, like a muffled finality, and just kept walking. The familiar tree-lined streets of my neighborhood wrapped around me a comforting quilt of genuine living. The distant rumble of lawn mowers, the joyous shouts of kids playing road hockey, the friendly calls of neighbors shouting greetings over fence lines. It was all a reminder of true, unpretentious life. Whatever avalanche was heading my way, I knew one thing for sure: I'd face it on my own terms, my dignity held high like a freshly ironed hockey jersey. Back in my bungalow, the crumpled $2 lottery ticket still lay forgotten in the kitchen trash, a tiny green monument to her casual dismissiveness. But it no longer held any power over me. I was done dwelling on it. 3 days had passed since I'd finally cut the cord, taken back what was mine. 3 quiet, almost serene days of morning coffee in my favorite mug, simple, honest meals, and the deep, abiding peace that only comes from standing up for yourself, from finally doing the right thing. I was just about to flip my perfectly scrambled eggs in my trusty cast-iron skillet when the phone, sitting silent for days, suddenly shrieked, shattering the peaceful morning calm. Dad, what the heck did you do to my card? Chloe's voice, sharper than a winter wind through a cracked window, exploded through the receiver before I could even mumble a hello. It was declined at the bay. Do you have any idea how utterly embarrassing that was? I lowered my spatula carefully onto the counter, my hand surprisingly steady, a quiet calm settling over me. I revoked your access. I stated my voice low and even after you took $13,000 from my account. I didn't take anything. Her voice climbed an octave, hitting that shrill, entitled note she'd perfected as a teenager whenever she was caught red-handed. That was family money, Dad, for someone who actually contributes to this family. You didn't ask permission, Chloe. I countered the words, firm. You just helped yourself. Helped. Through the phone I could faintly hear the rustle of flimsy shopping bags, the low drone of distant mall traffic. She was clearly calling me from the parking lot, probably right outside the very store that had just served her a big slice of humble pie. "I was standing there," she wailed, "with this beautiful $800 purse, Dad. 800. The sales associate swiped my card 3 times, before telling me right there in front of everyone that it was declined. People were staring, Dad, just staring. I looked. She declared, her voice filled with utter mortification, like some common person who couldn't afford her own things. The disdain in her voice when she spat out "common person" made something tighten in my chest, a bitter cold knot, as if not being able to casually drop $800 on a handbag was some kind of personal failure, a stain on your very character. "I'm sorry you were embarrassed, Chloe," I said quietly, each word measured and calm. "But that doesn't change what you did, what I did." She scoffed, a hollow, humorless sound. "What I did was show Graham the respect he deserves, something you've clearly never learned to do." I carried my old flip phone to my sturdy oak kitchen table, sinking into the same chair where just days ago I'd uncovered her betrayal. "Chloe," I said, my voice thick with a lifetime of memories, "I raised you. I worked my fingers to the bone, 60-hour weeks just to put you through university. I thought that counted for something. And Graham," she cut in her voice, cold as an Alberta winter night, "he helped us move beyond all that, Dad. He's shown us what real abundance looks like, what it truly means to be generous, not like someone hoarding loonies in a coffee tin." Her words hit me like a slap shot to the chest. 40 years, eh? 40 years of careful budgeting, of picking up no-name brands and driving my old Ford F-150 until the wheels nearly fell off, all so my family could have a decent life. And this was her takeaway. I was a miser. "You're going to regret this, Dad," she snarled, her voice dropping to a low, chilling register I'd never heard from her before, cold as an Arctic blast. "You honestly think you can shame me like that, right out in the open, and just stroll away? You think there won't be a reckoning?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Chloe, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm simply protecting myself." "No." She spat each word, a venomous dart. "You're being utterly selfish, petty, and downright cruel. But I'm not letting you get away with it. I have connections, Dad. People who matter in this community. People who actually grasp what family loyalty truly entails." The line went dead with a sharp, hollow click that rang in my quiet bungalow like a mournful echo. I slowly lowered the phone, picking up my spatula, but my scrambled eggs, once perfectly fluffy, had long since gone cold in the cast-iron skillet. Even when I tried to warm them up, they tasted like ashes in my mouth. Later that evening, the bungalow felt too vast, too quiet. I tried to drown out the silence with the television aimlessly flipping channels, though nothing really registered. A documentary on the elusive Canadian lynx, a cooking show, showcasing some ridiculously fancy desserts. I'd never dream of attempting a news segment about the fluctuating loonie that felt miles away from my own suddenly shrinking world. My old tablet sat on the coffee table, a forgotten relic since yesterday. I'd consciously avoided social media, avoiding the pull to peek into Chloe's curated life from afar. But the gnawing curiosity eventually won out. I opened up Facebook, scrolling past the usual updates from neighbors and snapshots from distant cousins enjoying their trips down south. Then there it was, Chloe's post right at the top of my feed, beside a photo of her looking utterly heartbroken, her eyes strategically red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying for hours. The caption read, "Having to share this breaks my heart, but I truly need all the support I can get right now. My own father," it continued, "has suddenly decided to cut off my access to what has always been our family money. After all the years I've been there for him, holding his hand through Mom's passing, even managing his finances when he couldn't cope, he suddenly decided I'm unworthy of his trust. All because I bought Graham, who frankly has been more of a steadfast father figure to our family than anyone, a thoughtful gift, using money that was just sitting there doing nothing in an account. I genuinely never imagined my own flesh and blood could be so utterly selfish and heartless. I'm honestly questioning every single thing I thought I knew about the man who raised me." The post already had 47 likes and 23 comments. I scrolled through them, a cold knot forming in my stomach with each new wave of misplaced sympathy. Comments like, "Oh my goodness, Chloe, I'm so incredibly sorry. Older folks can get so obsessed with their savings, it's truly sad." Or, "Your dad should be over the moon to have such a considerate daughter like you." And, "This is just awful. Graham is such a gem of a man. He absolutely deserved that cruise. Your father is acting completely absurd. Family funds are for the entire family, eh? Stay strong, dear." I slammed the tablet shut, the click loud in the stillness, and sat there, surrounded by the deepening gloom of my living room, listening to the familiar groans and creaks of my old bungalow settling around me. Somewhere, probably still nestled in the kitchen trash, lay that crumpled $2 lottery ticket, the flimsy joke that had somehow unraveled the whole damn mess. The silly scratcher that had, in one casual toss, laid bare what I truly meant to my own daughter. The next evening found me in the exact same worn armchair, the remote control resting loosely in my palm, my thumb idly surfing channels with no particular destination. The swirling aftermath of Chloe's online antics had clung to my thoughts like a stubborn January frost all day. Neighbors who suddenly couldn't quite meet my gaze, the young cashier at the Safeway, who gave me a strange, almost suspicious look. Chloe's version of events was spreading like wildfire through the community, and I bless my maple syrup-soaked soul was losing the fight for my own good name without even throwing a punch. Click, a cooking show demonstrating some impossibly intricate French pastries. Click, a sitcom from the 90s I'd seen more times than I'd changed my oil. Click, the local news droning on about city council budget woes. Click, and then there it was, the provincial lottery drawing program. Good evening, Canada, and welcome to tonight's Lotto 649 drawing, where we're looking at a rollover jackpot of $12 million. I instinctively reached for the remote to click past it, but something about the announcer's bright, almost annoyingly cheerful, the announcer's voice as smooth as freshly churned maple syrup, made me pause. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the moment. Here I was being painted as a stingy old coot for simply protecting what little I had, while some lucky Canuck out there was about to win enough loonies and toonies to last 100 lifetimes. "All right, folks, it's time to reveal tonight's winning numbers," the voice boomed, taking on that ceremonial tone reserved for truly monumental occasions. "And here they are, 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, and the bonus ball is 18. My hand poised over the remote froze solid. Those digits. They hit me like a puck to the gut. Disturbingly familiar, like a tune you couldn't quite place but knew you'd heard 1,000 times. I snatched a pen from my old coffee table and scrawled them on the back of a Tim Hortons napkin as the announcer repeated them slow and deliberate. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, and the bonus ball, 18. My heart started hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs before my brain even caught up. I knew those numbers. Knew them. I'd seen them recently, all right. I'd stared at them, burned them into my memory in a moment, thick with anger and bitter irony. The lottery ticket. That crumpled $2 insult Carrara had tossed my way like I was some stray dog, then had the gall to claim half of. The one I'd thrown into the bin in disgust just 3 days prior. My legs felt like wobbly hockey sticks as I stumbled into the kitchen, my gaze locked on the humble trash can. It sat there, innocent as a newborn beaver, brimming with the everyday detritus of my quiet, solitary life. Coffee grounds, empty pop cans, last night's salmon bones. I plunged my hands into the mess, not caring about the sticky banana peels or the soggy paper towels. My fingers clawed through the refuse, a frantic search for that flimsy piece of paper that could in an instant rewrite my entire future. Near the bottom, stuck stubbornly to the side of an empty yogurt container, my fingertips finally brushed against it. The lottery ticket. Stained with coffee grounds, crumpled beyond recognition, a relic of my anger, but undeniably, miraculously still readable. I clutched it careful as if handling fresh ice and carried it to the kitchen sink. My hands, usually steady from years of wrenching, trembled violently as I gently rinsed off the coffee grounds and other grime. Then with a slow, deliberate motion, I unfolded it. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, bonus ball, 18. Perfect. Every single number. A direct hit. I collapsed into my old kitchen chair, the sound of the worn wood creaking under my weight, and stared unblinking at the slightly damaged ticket. That $2 joke Carrara had flicked at me like I was a beggar on the street. The gift she'd had the audacity to buy with my own stolen money. Then with that signature smirk, claimed half ownership of the very scrap I'd tossed away in a fit of rage. It wasn't a mere lottery ticket. It was a golden ticket, worth 120 million Canadian dollars. My fingers still trembling like leaves in a windstorm, fumbled with my old flip phone, punching in the number for the provincial lottery hotline. I navigated the automated prompts, each mechanical voice sounding like a cosmic joke, until finally it confirmed what my pounding heart already knew. The winning numbers for tonight's Lotto 649 drawing are 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, and the bonus ball, 18. The jackpot amount for this draw is $120 million. The automated voice finished its pronouncement, and I hung up the silence that followed even louder. I looked around my modest kitchen, the space that had been my sanctuary, my refuge. The outdated appliances, the worn linoleum floor, the sturdy simple table where I ate my meals alone. All of it suddenly felt surreal, like I was standing on a movie set, and the crew was about to dismantle it and replace it with something entirely, impossibly different. The lottery ticket, still slightly damp from its journey through the trash, still creased with the raw force of my angry disposal, lay on my table. Carrara's chirpy, entitled voice echoed in the cavern of my mind, as clear as if she were standing right there. If it's a big one, Dad half's mine, eh? I barely slept a wink that night, the minutes crawling by like a slow-motion hockey replay. I'd alternate between checking the crumpled ticket for the 100th time, just to make sure the numbers hadn't changed, and staring up at my ceiling, a ceiling that seemed to mock my disbelief. By morning, the rising sun casting long, cold shadows across my kitchen, I'd almost convinced myself it was all a stress-induced hallucination, a cruel trick played by my lonely mind. But the numbers stared back unwavering, and the ticket, despite its brief, ignominious life in the garbage, was undeniably, gloriously real. The offices of the Western Canada Lottery Corporation, tucked away in downtown Edmonton, were far more impressive than I'd envisioned. Glass and steel reached for the gray late winter clouds, an imposing fortress of finance. Inside, security guards moved with quiet efficiency, and the air hummed with an atmosphere of serious, important business. I clutched the precious ticket inside a plastic sleeve, my palms sweating despite the crisp morning air. Mr. Woods, a lottery official, a calm professional woman named Janet Lee, offered a small smile as she took my slightly bedraggled ticket. "This is quite a story. Found it in your trash, you say. Threw it away in anger." I admitted, my voice a little rougher than I intended. "My daughter Carrara bought it as a Father's Day gift, but, well, the circumstances were a bit complicated." Janet nodded, her expression unreadable, devoid of judgment. She carefully slid the crumpled paper under a specialized scanner, her movements precise and practiced. "We see all kinds of situations here, Mr. Woods. The important thing is verification. And I'm very happy to tell you that this is indeed a winning ticket." Her words seemed to echo, bouncing off the pristine walls of the sterile office space, a chorus of disbelief and triumph. My hands tightened their grip on the arms of my chair, white-knuckled and trembling slightly. Janet's words were a comforting tether, pulling me back from the wild blue yonder. "Mr. Woods," she explained, her voice as smooth as fresh ice on a rink. "For a jackpot of this size, our verification process takes about 48 hours. We have a few hoops to jump through. Authenticate the ticket, prepare all the legal bits, and then we can sort out the payout." I just nodded, a bit numb, signing off on a mountain of paperwork and flashing my ID. Janet walked me through the nitty-gritty. Taxes, payment plans, whether I wanted to be on the 6 o'clock news. My head was spinning like a Zamboni by the time I walked out of that gleaming building. But one thing was clear as a prairie sky. Stephen Woods, was now $120 million richer. The drive home was a blur of familiar Calgary streets, now looking as alien as the moon. The corner convenience store, Miss Patterson's Petunias, the elementary school where Chloe first learned to read. Everything was the same, yet I felt like a tourist in my own life. I'd barely had time to kick off my boots when a familiar set of tires squealed into my gravel driveway. Chloe. She burst through the kitchen door. No knock. Her face flushed crimson, a mix of triumph and something wild. "Dad," she practically yelled. "I heard about the lottery. My boss's cousin's sister-in-law works at the commission office. She saw your name on the winner's list." I stayed put at my sturdy oak table, the official lottery paperwork spread out before me like the playbook for a particularly nasty hockey game. "Hello, Chloe. Don't hello Chloe me." She practically vibrated with impatient energy like a kid on Christmas morning. "Do you have any idea what this means? We're loaded, dad millionaires. Remember what I said, half's coming my way." "That was a gift, Chloe." I managed my voice surprisingly steady, considering the tempest brewing inside me. "You can't take back a gift." Her expression hardened faster than maple candy on snow. "We had an agreement. Everyone at Father's Day dinner heard me. Witnesses, Dad, real live witnesses. You flicked that ticket at me like it was yesterday's trash." I said, my voice low, a controlled hum of quiet fury. "And you bought it with money you outright stole from my account. This was never about sharing anything." "Stole?" Her voice ratcheted up sharp enough to cut through the quiet kitchen. "I used family money for a family purpose, and now you're trying to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine." I looked at my daughter, then really looked at her. And it wasn't Chloe. The little girl who used to curl up in my lap for stories about adventurous beavers and brave moose, she was gone. Replaced by a stranger whose first raw instinct upon hearing of my windfall was to figure out how much of it she could claim. "The ticket." I repeated each word, heavy with finality. was a gift. Whatever your intentions, whatever silly agreement you thought you had, that ticket became mine the moment you handed it over. "I'll sue you," she shrieked, slamming her hand down on my sturdy oak table, making the official papers jump like startled squirrels. "I'll prove that ticket is mine. I'll drag you into court and make sure everyone in this whole community knows exactly what kind of man you really are. And what kind of man am I, Chloe?" She paused, her chest heaving, her eyes narrowed like a lynx sizing up its prey. For a split second I saw it, a flicker of something, maybe recognition, maybe even a ghost of shame. But it vanished quicker than a puff of winter breath, replaced by a cold, calculating determination. "The kind who steals from his own daughter," she spat. And then, as dramatically as she'd arrived, she stormed out, her final bitter words hanging in the still air of my kitchen like the acrid smoke from a campfire gone wrong. I listened to her car engine roar to life, then fade into the crisp morning air, leaving only silence. I looked down at the official documents confirming my new reality, $120 million. More loonies and toonies than a person could ever spend in 10 lifetimes. And all I felt was bone-weary. I woke the next morning to the incessant buzzing of my old flip phone on the nightstand. 15 missed calls, 12 new text messages, and a cascade of social media notifications that made my stomach churn even before I'd properly opened my eyes. The first Facebook post popped up at 6:47 a.m., just as most folks were settling in with their morning coffee and the news. It was marked urgent. "My own father," it screamed, "has stolen my lottery ticket and is claiming the entire jackpot for himself. This is the same man who cut off my access to our family money and publicly humiliated me just days ago. The ticket was my gift to him with the clear understanding that any winnings would be shared." And then the kicker. This isn't just greed, folks. This is elder abuse. In reverse. When older folks get so obsessed with their money, they'll chew up their own kin. "Please share this. I need everyone to know the truth about what's really going on." The post featured a photo of me from last Christmas, bundled up in my ugliest, most Canadian holiday sweater, looking about as joyful as a frozen lake. Below it, the comments were piling up faster than snowdrifts in a prairie blizzard. But Chloe hadn't stopped at Facebook. Her Instagram feed showed a tear-streaked video of her perched in her SUV, mascara streaks running down her cheeks as she addressed the camera directly. "I truly hate airing our family's dirty laundry like this, folks, but I'm just desperate. My own father," she sobbed. "He's literally stolen my lottery ticket. He's claiming the entire 120 million loonies for himself. I bought that ticket for him as a Father's Day gift. I even joked, 'Half's mine, eh?' Because that's what we do in a family, right? We share." But apparently my dad heard that as some kind of legal challenge instead of a daughter's love. Meanwhile, Graham had orchestrated his own strategic campaign across LinkedIn and Facebook, his posts oozing with a heavy-handed sense of professional gravitas. "Witnessing financial elder abuse is devastating enough," he wrote. "But what we're seeing now, this reverse elder abuse, is equally corrosive to family bonds. When older individuals become so fixated on personal wealth that they betray their children's trust and genuine generosity, our entire community suffers." My wife Chloe is absolutely heartbroken by her father's shocking greed. This lottery ticket was purchased as a heartfelt gift with crystal-clear verbal agreements about sharing the winnings. Yet, Graham continued, he now claims exclusive unilateral ownership. This kind of behavior frankly tears families and communities apart. My old flip phone buzzed again. It was Brenda. "Stephen, for the love of God, what is happening?" she burst out, her voice tight with panic. "My neighbor just called me, asking if you actually stole Chloe's lottery ticket. Social media is going absolutely bonkers." I did my best to explain the situation, keeping it as simple as I could, but even to my own ears it sounded like a convoluted mess. Yes, Chloe bought the ticket. Yes, she made those jokes about sharing. And yes, I actually won. Then the hard part. And no, I don't believe I owe her a single cent. "But Stephen," Brenda interjected, her voice softening. "She did buy it for you, didn't she? With money she helped herself to from my account without asking Brenda." I reminded her the words, tasting like ash. By noon, the story had gone wildfire across our little corner of the internet. Local Facebook groups were crammed with heated debates about family loyalty, legal precedents, and moral obligations. The neighborhood app buzzed with furious discussions about the greedy lottery winner on Maple Street. I made the mistake of scrolling through comments on Chloe's posts. "This is absolutely disgusting. How could a father do this to his own daughter? Lawyers should get involved. This is plain and simple theft." Ease. I know this family. The daughter Chloe has always been so generous and kind. The father, well, he's always been a bit peculiar about money. Team Chloe, no way should an old man keep money that clearly belongs to his daughter. Even Graham's professional network had rallied. His colleagues from the investment firm were sharing his posts, adding their own solemn commentary on family values and financial ethics. Our shared social circle folks I'd known for years were publicly lining up to support Chloe's twisted version of events. I slammed my laptop shut and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the neighborhood I'd called home for 3 decades. 3 neighbors were huddled near my mailbox, clearly gossiping. When they saw me watching them from the window, they scattered like startled grouse. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Channel 7 News wants to interview you about the lottery controversy. Can you give us a call?" Another message pinged. "The Calgary Herald, seeking comment on the family lottery dispute." And another, "Legal representation available for lottery ticket disputes. Free consultation." I turned off my phone, letting it go silent, and sat back down at my quiet kitchen table. The official lottery paperwork was still spread out before me, looking less like a key to my future and more like a map of my supposed guilt. Outside, my neighbors whispered and speculated their judgments, delivered through curt social media comments, and the suddenly wide berth they gave me. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was worth $120 million, and I'd never felt more profoundly alone in my entire life. I laid the printouts of Chloe's latest social media broadsides across my sturdy oak kitchen table. Each comment, each like, each misguided share, feeling like another chunk of my reputation being chipped away. My character, meticulously built over 60 years of honest sweat and quiet integrity, was being digitally shredded piece by painful piece. The coffee forgotten grew cold in my Tim Hortons mug. Suddenly my old landline phone shrieked its mechanical bell, a jarring intrusion in the quiet, wounded space. I snatched the receiver. The caller ID glowed with a number I didn't recognize, but its uniform pattern hinted at a serious business line. "Mr. Woods, this is William Johnson, Graham's father." The voice was measured, professional, carrying the kind of understated authority that came from a lifetime of boardroom negotiations, not from shouting matches in a mall parking lot. I gripped the receiver tighter, a cold knot forming in my gut. "I'm not sure what there is to discuss, Mr. Johnson. There's quite a lot, actually." A beat of silence, heavy and deliberate. "Could we meet this morning?" Say Murphy's Diner on 5th Street in about an hour. Murphy's Diner, a place I frequented for their Saturday morning special, where the coffee flowed like a river and the hash browns were always crispy. It was the kind of unassuming salt-of-the-earth joint where Graham would never in a million years be caught dead. May I ask what this is about? I pressed my voice, betraying my confusion. The lottery ticket. William said simply, the words landing with the weight of granite. And what I witnessed on Father's Day. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum solo. You were there. I was, indeed. 1 hour, Mr. Woods. The line went dead with a click that sounded like a definitive period at the end of a very strange sentence. Graham's father wanting to meet about the lottery ticket. This could only mean trouble. Were they orchestrating some legal ambush? Or was William coming to pressure me into settling with Chloe to just be reasonable, eh? I almost didn't go. My initial instinct was to pull the blinds, unplug the phone, and burrow deep into my bungalow until the whole media storm blew over. But curiosity, sharp and undeniable, chipped away at my caution. Murphy's Diner sat on a corner lot that had hosted one no-nonsense restaurant or another for 50 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered linoleum floors, and the kind of coffee that could wake the dead, or at least get a sleepy logger ready for a long shift. I spotted William immediately, his custom-tailored navy suit standing out among the plaid shirts and faded jeans, like a peacock at a goose convention. He rose when he saw me, extending a well-manicured hand in greeting. "Mr. Woods, thank you for coming." We slid into a booth near the window where the pale morning light illuminated the deep lines around William's eyes, etched there by decades of hard decisions, not just easy living. The waitress, a motherly woman named Dolores, who'd been serving coffee here since I was in my 40s, poured 2 steaming cups without being asked, just the way she always did. I witnessed the entire gift exchange on Father's Day. William began without any preamble, his gaze steady, unwavering. Every word, every gesture. Your daughter Chloe handed you that lottery ticket and explicitly called it your Father's Day gift. I studied his face, searching for any sign of deception, any flicker of manipulation. He was Graham's father, after all. What was his game? She's claiming we had an agreement about splitting any winnings, I ventured, testing the waters. William's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. That's simply not what happened. I watched her throw that ticket across the table with a dismissive laugh. There was no negotiation, no agreement, no verbal contract. It was a gift, pure and simple. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through Facebook with the efficient, practiced ease of someone who'd built a business empire in the digital age. What my son and daughter-in-law are doing is unconscionable. They're destroying your reputation with lies. You're Graham's father, I said carefully, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Why would you go against your own son? William's laugh was short, bitter, devoid of humor. Because I raised him to have integrity, and he's forgotten everything I taught him. This lottery situation, Mr. Woods, has revealed something about Graham that deeply disappoints me. He showed me his phone screen where he'd begun typing a lengthy Facebook post, his thumbs flying across the keyboard. I'm going to set the record straight. My name carries weight in this community, Mr. Woods. People know I don't lie about business matters, and this is exactly that. A matter of legal ownership and ethical behavior. I leaned slightly, reading over his shoulder as he refined his statement. As a witness to the Father's Day gathering at Stephen Woods's home, I feel compelled to address the current social media controversy. I personally observed Chloe Johnson purchase and present a lottery ticket to her father as a Father's Day gift. There was no negotiation, no agreement about sharing winnings, and no strings attached to the gesture. Mr. Woods is the undisputed owner of that ticket, and any fortune it might have generated. The current social media assault against me was built on a foundation of outright lies, and Arthur, bless his soul, couldn't stand by while a good man's reputation was being dragged through the mud by members of his own kin. "You don't have to do this, Arthur," I said quietly, the words feeling too small in the face of his conviction. "Yes, Stephen, I do." Arthur's finger hovered over the post button, a determined glint in his eye. "My son has forgotten what it means to be a man of honor, to uphold a basic standard of decency. Perhaps a little public embarrassment will serve as a stark reminder." He tapped the screen, posting the statement. Immediately his phone began buzzing like a hive of angry bees with notifications. Within minutes, comments began to flood in from folks in Arthur's business community. Colleagues who knew his reputation for honesty and fair dealing, who understood that his word was as good as gold. "This changes everything," I breathed, watching the tide of public opinion shift in real time. Arthur pocketed his phone and looked at me directly, his gaze firm. "Mr. Woods, I built my entire business on integrity. I simply can't stand by and watch my son dismantle that legacy with lies and manipulation." We settled into a comfortable silence, just watching the normal folks go about their Saturday morning routines. Families ordered stacks of pancakes drowning in maple syrup. Elderly couples shared the morning's Calgary Herald. Teenagers texted away while their parents tried bless their hearts to engage them in conversation. Life continued on familiar and unpretentious, while my world, once shattered, began to mend itself. "The truth has a funny way of surfacing, doesn't it?" Stephen Arthur said finally, his voice soft. "Sometimes it just needs the right person to speak it." We shook hands outside the diner, his grip firm and reassuring, like the steady hand of a true friend. As he walked toward his sleek black Mercedes, I remained by my modest sedan, feeling something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Real, honest-to-goodness hope, like the first hint of spring after a long, cold winter. 2 weeks later, the phone call I'd been waiting for finally came. "Mr. Woods, this is Emily Wong from the Western Canada Lottery Corporation. Your verification process is complete, and we'd like to invite you to our formal check presentation ceremony tomorrow morning." A ceremony, I asked, still trying to process the sheer magnitude of what was happening, my mind still stuck on the image of my little bungalow. "We offer winners the choice between a private meeting and a public presentation." Emily explained, her voice as smooth as fresh ice on a rink. "Given the recent interest in your case, Mr. Woods, we thought you might prefer the transparency of a public ceremony." I thought about Chloe's venomous social media campaign, about the whispered conversations that followed me through the grocery aisles, about the neighbors who no longer made eye contact, skirting around me like I carried a contagious disease. Yes, I'd like the public ceremony. Excellent. 10:30 a.m., sharp, at our Edmonton headquarters. There will be media present, so do dress appropriately. And Mr. Woods, congratulations. This is going to change your life. That evening, I laid out my best clothes. A navy blue suit I'd bought for my wife's funeral 8 years ago. A crisp white shirt that still held the sharp edges of professional pressing, and the tie Chloe had given me for Christmas 5 years back, before everything changed between us. The Western Canada Lottery Corporation offices buzzed with activity when I arrived. Television crews adjusted their lighting equipment, photographers tested angles, and lottery officials bustled around with clipboards and official documents, their movements precise and practiced. I felt like an extra who'd wandered onto someone else's movie set, completely out of my depth. Mr. Wood's Emily Wong approached with a warm, genuine smile. Ready to become a millionaire, eh? The actual ceremony was surprisingly formal. There was a backdrop featuring the Western Canada Lottery Corporation logo, an oversized check that took 2 people to hold, and enough camera flashes to light up a stadium. When Emily announced me as the winner of the $120 million jackpot, the applause felt surreal, like a distant echo. "This is certainly unexpected," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying better than I'd hoped, steady and clear. "I plan to use this blessing responsibly to help others to pursue dreams I'd long since put aside, and to simply live with dignity." The questions from reporters came rapidly, a flurry of inquiries. How did it feel to win? What were my plans? Would I quit working? I answered as honestly as I could, focusing on gratitude and responsibility rather than the messy family drama that had inadvertently brought me here. Then through the crowd, I saw them. Just as I was trying to absorb it all, a commotion erupted. Chloe and Graham, their faces a mixture of desperation and furious determination, bulldozed their way through the throng of reporters. Chloe, of course, was in one of her power outfits, a designer dress that likely cost more than I made in a good month at the garage. Graham was right behind her, looking ruffled, but still trying to maintain an air of importance. "Stop everything." Chloe's voice, sharp as an Arctic wind, cut through the buzzing air, making every head swivel. "That's my ticket. We had an agreement." Security moved in fast, but Chloe wasn't deterred. "Everyone here needs to know," she shrieked, her voice carrying across the polished room. "That ticket was mine. He's stealing from his own daughter." The cameras, moments ago, fixed on my bewildered face, and the oversized check spun like startled deer toward the new spectacle. This was the kind of raw family drama the news crews salivated over. "Ma'am, please step away from the ceremony area," a security guard said, calm but firm like a goalie protecting his net. I met Chloe's gaze, surprised by the sudden deep calm that had settled over me. "Chloe," I said, my voice low and steady, "don't do this. Not here." But she was beyond listening, flailing her arms like a frantic windmill as Graham tried half-heartedly to pull her back. "I bought that ticket," she wailed. "I said half was mine, eh? Everyone at that Father's Day dinner heard me." A reporter, scenting blood, shoved a microphone into my face. "Mr. Woods, can you comment on this? Family matter?" I took a breath. The ticket was a Father's Day gift from my daughter. I stated, my voice ringing clear and steady over the din. "Mr. William Johnson, who was present that day, has already confirmed the circumstances of that gift. That's all there is to it, folks. What do you plan to do with the money?" Another voice yelled. I glanced at Chloe, still shouting about agreements and theft, and a cold clarity settled in. All the years of trying to patch things up, of bailing her out, of turning a blind eye, all out of a misguided love. "I plan to help others who truly deserve it," I said, my voice resonating with a quiet conviction. "I intend to start the auto restoration business I've dreamed about for years. And I intend to live with the kind of integrity that makes a person worthy of genuine good fortune, eh?" The ceremony finally wrapped up amidst polite handshakes and the rustle of official paperwork. Outside, through the plate glass windows of the lottery office, I could see Chloe and Graham still going at it, yelling at each other beside their sleek silver BMW. His gestures were growing as animated as hers, their voices rising in a desperate, ugly duet. I walked out, clutching the oversized check and the official documentation that proclaimed me one of the wealthiest men in all of Canada. As my old sedan pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a final glimpse of them in my rearview mirror. Still standing there, still tearing into each other, their relationship fracturing under the crushing weight of their own insatiable greed. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, a genuine unforced smile spread across my face. The next morning, I was enjoying my coffee at the kitchen table. The Calgary Herald spread open its front page, emblazoned with my face, and the headline, "Local Mechanic Wins $120 million lottery." I was still processing the surreal reality of it all when I heard the familiar slam of a car door. I looked up, and through the kitchen window, I saw Chloe. Her swagger was gone, replaced by a defeated slump to her shoulders as she shuffled hesitantly up my driveway, a stark contrast to her usual confident stride. Instead of her usual dramatic entrance, there was a soft, almost timid tap at my door. 3 gentle raps that sounded surprisingly apologetic. I opened it to find her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, her expensive clothes wrinkled, looking like she'd spent the night sleeping in the back seat of her car. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely a thread. Could we talk, please?" Despite the whirlwind of betrayal, a flicker of that old paternal instinct stirred in my chest. "Come in, Chloe," I said, stepping aside. She followed me into the living room, perching on the very edge of my worn Chesterfield, like a nervous sparrow, ready to bolt at any moment. Her hands worried at each other in her lap as her eyes darted around the modest, familiar space that had once been her childhood sanctuary. "Dad, I'm so sorry about yesterday." She began, her voice small, a fragile whisper. I was just overwhelmed and so scared. I wasn't thinking straight, eh? The tears started then, streaming down her face, with what looked like practiced precision, though I knew genuine desperation lurked beneath. He's been pressuring me so much lately about money," she choked out. "Our finances they're much, much worse than I've told anyone, Dad. I didn't know who else to turn to." I settled into my old recliner, maintaining a careful, unspoken distance between us, my gaze steady. "What kind of financial trouble, Chloe?" I asked, my voice still even. "We're about to lose our townhouse," she said, her voice cracking, the carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. She hung on my every word, spinning a tale of mortgage payments piling up, credit cards maxed out, and Graham's high-flying investment firm nosediving. They were drowning, she claimed, almost 400 grand in the red, and the bank was already sharpening its claws for foreclosure. Her voice, laced with theatrical anguish, painted a portrait of sleepless nights, quiet, panic attacks, and frantic scrambles to keep up appearances while their carefully constructed world imploded. Graham's big-shot investment firm was a sinking ship, she insisted, shedding clients like a dog. Sheds winter fur bleeding money with every passing day. Their swanky golf club membership, too embarrassing to cancel, apparently. And Noah's elite private school tuition, a bottomless pit, sucking them dry. I was just too mortified to ask for help sooner, Dad. She sniffled, dabbing her eyes with a tissue as pristine as a fresh snowfall. "You know how much pride Graham takes in his reputation. He'd absolutely curl up and die if he knew I was here at your door begging for a bailout." I listened, a bitter taste in my mouth. A performance. That's what it was, every practiced sob, every artful tear. The same old song and dance she'd perfected as a teenager whenever she had her sights set on something. The crocodile tears, the damsel in distress act, the calculated tugging at my heartstrings. "You've always been my rock, Dad," she murmured, reaching across the chasm of silence between us to lightly touch my hand. "I just need you one more time." just enough to keep a roof over our heads and get back on solid ground. How much? Chloe, I asked, my voice flat. $2 million would solve absolutely everything, she blurted out, the words tumbling over each other as if she'd practiced that exact number 100 times. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what you won, Dad. You'd still have well over 100 million left. The sheer audacious simplicity of her demand almost took my breath away. $2 million. A sum that pre-lottery would have represented 40 years of my hard-earned pay, tossed out as casually as asking for $20 for a Tim Hortons run. Chloe, I said gently, my voice firm despite the tremor inside. I've heard these kinds of promises before. Her practiced vulnerability slipped a flicker of genuine confusion crossing her features. What do you mean, she asked, a fragile frown creasing her brow. You helped yourself to $13,000 from my account without so much as a "by your leave." You publicly shredded my reputation on social media. You even tried to forcibly claim my lottery ticket yesterday right there in front of everyone. I kept my voice calm, factual, each word a stone laid firmly in place. And now you expect me to reward that behavior by handing over $2 million. But this is different. The tears gushed now, more frantic, less controlled. I was wrong before, Dad. I admit it, but we're talking about losing everything. Our house, our entire life. Noah's education, Chloe. I stated, my voice holding the weight of a long overdue lesson. You need to learn to solve your own problems. The words hung in the air, a final unyielding wall between us. Chloe's face transformed, the carefully maintained mask of vulnerability crumbling to reveal the hard, flinty defiance underneath. You're actually going to do this? She demanded, her voice taking on that familiar sharp edge I knew all too well. You're really going to let your own daughter lose her home while you're sitting on $100 million? I love you, Chloe, I said, my voice heavy with a truth I'd finally accepted, but I won't enable your choices anymore. She sprang to her feet, pacing back and forth to the window like a caged lynx. Fine, fine. But don't you dare expect to be part of Noah's life going forward. Don't expect Christmas dinners. Don't expect family get-togethers. Don't even think about a phone call when he graduates high school. The threats came in a furious barrage, each one a calculated shot aimed at my deepest fears of isolation, of being forgotten, of dying a lonely old man. No grandkids at my funeral, no connection to the generations to come. Just me alone, because I was too selfish to help my only child. If that's your choice, I said quietly, my voice utterly devoid of emotion, then I'll have to accept it. The quiet finality in my tone seemed to hit her like a surprise body check. She stared at me for a long, fraught moment, perhaps finally realizing that her well-worn manipulation playbook had met its match. You've changed, she said, her voice brittle with disappointment. That money has made you cruel. No, Chloe, I replied, my gaze steady. That money has made me free. She stormed out without another word, her angry footsteps echoing like gunshots on my front walkway as she stomped to her car. I stood at my front window watching her peel out of my driveway tires, squealing like a banshee, leaving a faint scent of burnt rubber in the crisp air. I turned away from the glass, letting out a long, slow breath. A strange mix of profound sadness and undeniable relief settled over me like a prairie fog. The little girl who used to drift off to sleep in my lap, listening to stories about brave adventurers, was truly gone. Replaced by a stranger I no longer recognized and more painfully couldn't save. I walked quietly to my kitchen, the familiar hum of my old fridge a comforting presence. My movements were calm, purposeful, like a steady hand on the wheel. Some bridges, I realized, once burned, were never meant to be rebuilt. 3 months after the whirlwind, I found myself in the quiet, empty living room of my new home, phone in hand, watching the last boxes being loaded onto the moving truck. I scrolled to Chloe's contact, and with a resolute thumb, selected block this number. The drive to Riverbend took a solid 3 hours, winding deep into the Kootenai foothills through rolling countryside that promised quiet forests and clear, untroubled streams. Here I would simply be Stephen Woods, a new resident, shedding the notoriety of that lottery winner who dominated the news cycles back in Calgary. My new bungalow, nestled on a street lined with towering spruce trees, was comfortably off the beaten path, far enough from any major hub that an unexpected visit would require genuine commitment, Old man McTavish's garage. A local institution had been quietly on the market for months. The moment I walked through the bay doors, inhaling that familiar comforting scent of motor oil, fresh polish, and honest labor, I knew I'd stumbled onto my next purpose. "You sure you want this much work, Stephen?" Old man McTavish chuckled, gesturing at the classic project cars filling every bay. "Most folks your age are thinking about slowing down." I ran my hand along the smooth, cool fender of a '67 Mustang. "Not me, McTavish," I said, a smile pulling at my lips for the first time in what felt like ages. "I'm just getting started." Within a fortnight, McTavish's had become Woods's classic garage. I hired a couple of bright young apprentices from the local college, and remembering those lean, lonely years after losing my late wife, I quietly established the North Star Compassion Fund for families, aimed at helping single parents navigate life's tougher curves. Evenings in Riverbend were peaceful a balm to my soul. I could walk the tree-lined streets without the unsettling feeling of whispered conversations following my every step. The Timberline Grill. The local diner served up coffee and conversation without a single sideways glance or a whiff of gossip about my personal life. "Settling in, all right, dear Helen?" my next-door neighbor asked one afternoon, her kind eyes twinkling as she handed me a plate of warm homemade butter tarts. "It's a quiet neighborhood, but we look out for each other here." Quiet was exactly what I'd hoped for, I told her, and I meant it. The garage became my sanctuary, working alongside those young mechanics, patiently untangling engine woes and polishing chrome until it gleamed. I rediscovered a deep, abiding satisfaction in solving problems with my hands, not with a checkbook. We painstakingly restored a 1955 Chevrolet to mint condition, bringing it back to life piece by painstaking piece. The owner, a grizzled old logger, actually wept when he saw it, and I understood completely. Sometimes, even now, Chloe would flit through my thoughts, but without that sharp, visceral pain. The money hadn't changed me. It had simply revealed what I'd always been underneath, years of misguided enabling. My old flip phone would occasionally buzz with unknown numbers, calls I suspected were from her. But I simply let them go to voicemail, no longer compelled to pick up. One crisp Thursday evening, I locked up after finishing a particularly intricate 1969 Camaro restoration. Driving home, I passed the Riverbend Community Center, where a newly installed plaque read, "The North Star Compassion Fund, supporting strong families through tough times." I parked my truck and looked up at the emerging stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Canadian sky. Somewhere out there, Chloe was living with the consequences of her choices. What I could control, what truly mattered to me now, was building something meaningful, something real. Every restored car, every grant from the foundation felt like a quiet vote for a world where character truly mattered more than connections, where integrity was the real currency. And the lottery ticket, that crumpled $2 insult, the one I'd retrieved from the trash in a fit of righteous fury, it hung framed in my office now, not as a trophy, but as a stark, powerful reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most valuable gifts in life come disguised as garbage, and the most necessary, profoundly impactful lessons arrive wrapped in a lifetime of pain.